So just recently, like literally a week ago, I got married to the love of my life. My wife and I have been together for 3 years before tying the knot, and I was over the moon. We were in full honeymoon mode, soaking in the joy, the love, all that cheesy but totally real stuff. Everything felt perfect. But then, out of nowhere, out of the blue, my wife gets this message on Facebook. We were sitting together when she saw it, and right away she showed it to me. It was from this 19-year-old girl I had never seen or heard of before, and she straight up accused me of hooking up with her. Now, the moment I read it, I was in total shock. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. First of all, I have never cheated on my wife, not even once. Not emotionally, not physically, nothing. I've always believed in staying loyal. And I genuinely love my wife more than anything. And secondly, I seriously had no clue who this girl was. Her name didn't ring a bell. Her profile picture didn't look familiar. Nothing about her was recognizable. It was like being accused by a complete stranger on the street, and it made no sense. For context, back when I first met my wife, well, she wasn't my wife yet. Obviously, it was at this party a friend of mine was throwing. I remember walking in just expecting a regular night, nothing crazy, but then I saw her, and I swear, it was like the room paused for a second. She had this presence about her that you just couldn't ignore. Gorgeous, yeah. But also just this energy, this glow. Have you ever met someone who's got that perfect mix of charm and confidence, but also seems totally down to earth? That was her. Now, here's the thing. I knew right away that she was way out of my league. I mean, like different planets out of my league. She was the kind of girl everyone noticed when she walked in, the kind of person who turns heads without even trying. Meanwhile, I was just some regular dude hanging out, sipping my drink, trying not to make a fool of myself. But for whatever reason, she came over to talk to me. We clicked instantly. I don't even remember what we talked about that night. Probably random stuff, but it just flowed. And yeah, we both had a few drinks. The music was loud, the vibe was right. We danced for what felt like hours, and I was just in awe of her the whole time. Nothing else happened that night. No big moment, no kiss, nothing romantic. But to me, it still felt like something special. But the next day, I assumed it was probably a one-time thing. I figured someone like her probably met a ton of people and that I was just another guy at the party. I didn't expect anything. I mean, honestly, I thought she probably wouldn't even remember me. Then, out of nowhere, about a week later, my friend called me up. I picked up the phone and he goes, "Hey, remember that girl from the party? Yeah, she's been asking about you." I thought he was joking at first, like, no way, but he was serious. He said she actually asked him if I was going to reach out and that she was waiting for me to make a move. So, yeah, after that, I did talk to her and we went out on a few dates. From the very first one, I just knew that she was going to be my wife one day. We talked for hours. We always laughed so much together. There was this spark between us that didn't feel forced or like we were trying too hard. It just felt real. And even though we came from totally different worlds, none of that seemed to matter at first. She was open, kind, and honestly, she never once acted like she was better than anyone. Just to be clear, my wife comes from serious money. I'm talking generational wealth, and I don't want to get into details out of respect for her and her family, but let's just say she's used to a life of comfort, luxury, and access that most people only see in movies. Meanwhile, I grew up in a much more modest way. My parents worked incredibly hard just to make sure we had the basics: food, clothes, and a roof over our heads. And they did it all without complaining. They're amazing people, and even though we didn't have much, I never felt like I was missing out. I was raised to be grateful for everything I had, and I always carried that mindset with me. I put myself through college, picked up part-time jobs, lived paycheck to paycheck for a while, grinding basically, and eventually I landed a stable, well-paying job. It wasn't easy, but I was proud of how far I'd come. I was building something for myself. And for a long time, that was enough. Up until a certain point in our relationship, I had no idea about her family's wealth. She always kept things really low key, no flashy talk, no name dropping, no signs that she came from money. She told me later that it was something she always did early in relationships. A sort of test, I guess, to make sure people liked her for who she was and not for the name or money behind her. When we started getting more serious, she told me her parents wanted to meet me. That's when she sat me down and finally explained everything. Who her family was, what kind of background she came from, and just how different our upbringings really were. I'll be honest, I was stunned. I had no idea she was this rich. She could literally have her pick of anyone, successful, wealthy, and probably even famous. So why me? A regular guy with a decent job and a humble upbringing? But she has never made me feel less than her, not even once. She said she loved the way I sincerely cared for her, how I always showed up for her emotionally, and how I loved her dogs like they were my own. She'd seen how I took care of my parents, even with my busy schedule, and she told me that meant everything to her. That for me, family always came first. Because she saw a life with me, a future. She wanted me to meet her parents. Even though I was nervous, like really nervous, it really meant the world to me. I also felt kind of honored. I was hopeful that if I just showed her parents who I really was, they'd understand too. But nothing could have prepared me for what actually happened. The day I met her parents, I tried my best to make a good impression. Her mom was polite, maybe a bit distant, but not outright rude to my face. Her dad, though, disliked me and didn't even try to hide it. He looked at me up and down and completely straight-faced said, "I've done a background check on you and your family, and frankly, I don't think you meet our standards. My daughter can do much better than you." I stood there trying to keep my composure, but I was honestly stunned. I mean, who says that out loud to someone their daughter clearly cares about? He then turned to my wife right in front of me and said something like, "You still have a chance to break this off before it's too late, before he baby traps you." My wife, God bless her, stood up for me the entire time. She confronted her dad and told him flat out that his comments were out of line and unfair, and that I wasn't some gold digger or manipulator trying to take advantage of her. She reminded him that I had a stable career, that I worked hard to get where I was, and more importantly, that she loved me for who I was, not what I had. But her dad never budged. He just sat there, arms crossed, with this smug look on his face. He kept repeating that she was being naive and that she was wasting her time with me. He wanted her to wake up and think about her future, and that he wanted her to date someone more established. I was really bummed out by his dislike towards me. After we left, my wife apologized to me a dozen times. She was so upset, not just for how I'd been treated, but for the fact that her dad had embarrassed her too. She told me that her parents loved her deeply and that she truly believed, with time, they'd eventually come around to liking me. She said once they saw how serious we were and how happy we made each other, they'd have no choice but to accept it, and I wanted to believe that. I really did. But the thing is, that for the entire 3 years we were dating, her father never stopped trying to break us up. He'd constantly guilt trip her, question her judgment, make snide remarks about my intentions with her, pressure her to find someone more suitable. It was like he had made up his mind from day one that I wasn't good enough. And no amount of love, commitment, or proof otherwise was going to change it. It hurt. Not because I needed his approval for my validation, but because I knew it hurt my wife too, that her father didn't approve of her father. There was even an occasion when father-in-law invited us to a big family party. He said it was just a get-together with extended family and some close friends. But then, in the middle of the party, her dad gathered everyone's attention and made this huge announcement. He said, completely out of nowhere, that he and one of his longtime business friends had decided to take their relationship to the next level and turn their business relationship into a family bond by deciding that their kids, my wife and his friend's son, were going to get married. My wife and I just froze when we heard this. Father-in-law had never ever brought this up before. Never discussed it with my wife or even mentioned it to either of us. Yet he just ambushed her in front of dozens of people and announced her engagement to someone she didn't even know. Like she was a bargaining chip in a business deal. My wife obviously got into a heated argument with her dad right there in front of everyone, telling him he had no right to choose who she had to marry. She was furious that he tried to arrange a marriage with a complete stranger just for some business deal, especially when he knew full well that she was already with me and wanted to marry me. She called his plan disgusting. Everyone else was also stunned. You could hear a pin drop after that. We didn't wait for anyone's reaction. We just walked out, straight out of that fancy house, past all those judgmental stares, past the whispers, past the embarrassment. It should have ended there. It should have been the wake-up call he needed, but of course, it wasn't. Later that night, father-in-law called my wife, not to apologize, not to admit he was wrong, but to double down on his decision. He told her that marrying his friend's son was the right thing, that it was a win-win situation. He explained that not only would it help him get ahead in his business, but that she'd be marrying into a millionaire family instead of settling for a poor guy like me. It was like he truly believed what he had decided was more important than what my wife felt about it. By this point, my wife had truly reached her breaking point for years. Literal years. She had been trying patiently and with so much grace to make her father understand how serious she was about me. She stood by me through every insult, every eye roll, every snide comment he threw our way. But no matter what she said or did, her father refused to budge. It was like he had this idea in his head of who she should be with, and he was dead set on making that happen no matter how much it hurt her. However, that was the last straw. After that, we sat down and talked, really talked about how much more of this we could take. And together, we made a decision. We were done. No more forcing ourselves into situations where we weren't respected. No more giving second, third, fourth chances to someone who had made it crystal clear that he didn't value us as a couple. We decided to cut him and mother-in-law out of our lives completely. Although mother-in-law had never openly disrespected me, she had also never stood up for us. She just went along with whatever he said. Fast forward to this year, our wedding. One of the happiest and most important days of our lives. We didn't send our in-laws any invitations. We didn't want my mother-in-law's bitterness casting a shadow over a day that was supposed to be filled with love and joy. We'd been through enough already. We weren't about to let him ruin this too. But of course, he found out about the wedding, and what he did next honestly made my blood boil. On the morning of our wedding day, my wife received a huge bouquet of black roses, and along with it, a note, a nasty, bitter message that said, "Don't come crying to me when your marriage is inevitably over and he takes you for everything you have." That card wasn't about concern. It was pure humiliation. It was meant to shake her, to scare her, to make her doubt everything. Despite all of that, our wedding went well. My wife's grandparents and the rest of her relatives did attend, and everyone was genuinely happy for us. Anyway, during our honeymoon, when my wife received a text from some random woman and showed it to me, she wasn't suspicious of me at all. She knows me very well by now. I mean, I don't even have a password on my phone. I work from home with her and am constantly around her. So she knew there was no way I'd ever even have the time to hook up with someone else. However, we wanted to get to the bottom of things, so my wife decided to humor the situation and asked the woman for her phone number so they could talk further about me hooking up with her. The woman provided her number, and my wife then texted her on iMessage asking for more details about where this alleged hookup happened. For her part, the woman came up with an incredible story, claiming that I had met her through Tinder, taken her on a date, and then we allegedly went to her place for the night. My wife then asked her for screenshots or any proof that would show I had texted her. But of course, the woman had nothing because it never happened. My wife then called the woman directly and put her on speakerphone as she confronted her head on, telling her we knew she was lying. She asked why the woman was making up this story. The other woman, for her part, initially tried to argue and stand by her words, but my wife threatened to hire a private investigator to find out every little detail about her. She also said she would use the false messages the woman sent about me in court, claiming that the woman had no right to make up such lies and harass us. The other woman paused, and I guess she finally realized she was in deep. She reluctantly admitted to my wife that she had lied and that it was all just for good fun. She didn't think things would escalate this far. However, my wife still wasn't satisfied. She asked the woman why she would lie about something so serious when it was clearly going to fall apart. That's when the woman admitted that my father-in-law had made her do it. Both my wife and I exchanged a look. My father-in-law had made this woman lie to us. What was going on? The woman continued apologizing to my wife and saying she was sorry for her finding out like this. She didn't want my wife to have a bad impression of her because she was in love with my father-in-law and they were both planning to get married one day. I watched my wife's face turn white as I gasped in shock. We seriously had no idea that father-in-law was having an affair, let alone with this woman who seemed so convinced she was in love with him. It all felt so surreal. At first, we didn't want to believe her. After all, she had just lied to my wife about her night with me, and now she was suddenly confessing to an affair with my father-in-law. My wife asked her for proof, and that woman sent multiple photos, videos, and text messages, some of which were almost too disgusting to read. That's when we slowly began to process the horrifying reality that this woman was genuinely involved in an affair with my wife's father. The woman then confessed that she had been sleeping with my father-in-law for almost a year. Recently, he had asked her to lie to my wife about the so-called night with me because he wanted her to sabotage our marriage. She admitted she knew what she was doing was wrong, but he had promised that if she did this for him, he would actually consider marrying her in the future. It was honestly laughable that this delusional woman genuinely believed that my father-in-law would leave my mother-in-law for her. My wife and I were absolutely stunned. The woman even sent a screenshot confirming that my father-in-law had pressured her into texting my wife with false claims about how she had hooked up with me, all in an attempt to make my wife lose trust in me. Ever since that conversation, my wife has been obsessively going through all the photos and videos that the woman sent us, trying to figure out if they're real or if they've been photoshopped. She's been scrolling through them over and over again, looking for any sign that it's all fake, but everything seems way too genuine. She's at her breaking point, completely torn about what to do. On one hand, if this whole thing turns out to be false, she doesn't want to confront her dad about it and end up being humiliated, especially if he laughs it off and denies everything. But on the other hand, if it's true, if my father-in-law is really having an affair, then she wants to protect her mom, just in case he actually leaves her behind for this young woman. It's a nightmare scenario for her, and she just doesn't know what to do. She feels like she's caught between a rock and a hard place, and it's taking a huge emotional toll on her. Will we be the a-hole if we take this evidence to mother-in-law? Update 1. First of all, it's important to make it clear that my mother-in-law's family is the one with generational wealth. My father-in-law was an outsider who married into that wealth. Like me, he didn't have much when they first got together, but with my mother-in-law's support and her business contacts, he was able to start his own business and build something. But here's the thing. When he met me, he treated me terribly. I'm not sure if it's because I reminded him of his younger self or if it was because he felt insecure, especially since, unlike him, I wasn't impressed by their family wealth. I never cared about that. I just want to make it clear to everyone who might be worried that my father-in-law could somehow kick my wife out of the family inheritance. He can't. The wealth belongs to my mother-in-law and her grandparents, and they will always make sure that my wife gets her fair share of the assets, no matter what my father-in-law tries to do. He doesn't have the power to take that away from her. The only thing father-in-law can do is not give his business to my wife, which she's fine with, as she has never been interested in his business anyway. Secondly, the fact that my father-in-law is having an affair with this younger woman who's only 19 actually makes a lot of sense in hindsight. My wife says there was always things she just didn't put together until now. For one, he's hardly ever home, always off on these so-called work trips. And whenever he is at home, he's always making sure my mother-in-law can't touch his phone. My wife says she always felt something wasn't right in her parents' marriage, but she could never put her finger on it. Also, maybe this isn't the only affair he has had. It's possible that there have been other women too, and this is just one of many. The main thing I don't understand is why my father-in-law would even ask his affair partner to text my wife. Did he seriously think his plan would work? How could he be so stupid to believe that my wife would actually fall for something like this? I mean, the whole thing was so far-fetched. Did he think my wife would just blindly believe some random woman's story about me? It blows my mind. Anyway, my wife and I have a lot to think about now. It's not just about confronting my father-in-law, but also about how to move forward with everything that's come to light. The trust, the family dynamics, it's all been shaken. And we need time to process it all. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since our last update. Since we've been back from our honeymoon, we decided it was time to call my wife's parents over for lunch. They were pretty surprised that we reached out to them, especially since we hadn't been in touch for such a long time. But my mother-in-law seemed enthusiastic about meeting up. My father-in-law, however, had no idea what was coming his way. Oh, and by the way, my wife had texted his girlfriend before all this, asking her to keep our conversation a secret. It seems like the woman really wants my father-in-law all to herself, so she promised to stay quiet. Honestly, I think she expects that once we expose him, my mother-in-law will leave him and then she'll be able to have him all to herself. It's crazy how much she believes this whole thing is going to work out for her. Anyway, as soon as our in-laws arrived, my wife didn't waste any time. She immediately sat them down and confronted my father-in-law. At first, he was totally taken aback, shocked that she was accusing him of such serious things. But once she started showing the proof, his face went pale. You could see the shock and guilt all over him. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, looked absolutely furious. We didn't hold anything back. We told her everything, starting with the affair my father-in-law had been having with this young woman. Then we explained how the same woman had tried to sabotage our marriage by making up a lie about me, just because my father-in-law had pressured her into it. The whole situation was spilling out, and you could see it all hitting my mother-in-law like a ton of bricks. It was a tense, uncomfortable moment, and it felt like everything was unraveling. Long story short, my mother-in-law slapped my father-in-law across the face and yelled at him, throwing every curse word imaginable his way. She was absolutely livid, and I can't say I blame her. He tried to explain his actions, but she wasn't in any mood to listen. She wasn't having any of it. In fact, she even asked my wife to call his girlfriend so that she could talk to her directly. The whole thing was nerve-wracking. My wife was on edge, making the call, and the tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My father-in-law's face just kept getting paler as everything came crashing down. My wife couldn't hold back and finally asked him, "Why did you even ask your girlfriend to fabricate a lie about her having a hookup with me?" We had to know what could possibly have been going through his mind when he made that decision. It made no sense. Why go to such extremes to destroy a relationship that had nothing to do with him? He didn't say a word. He couldn't even look us in the eye or offer a coherent explanation. His silence spoke volumes, and in that moment it was clear that he had no real remorse. He had no words to explain why he'd been so vile. I'm guessing that it was just anger and frustration on his part, directed at us for having the audacity to get married, even when he was so against the idea. Probably that is why he wanted to sabotage our relationship and destroy our marriage. What he didn't know was that I wasn't a cheater like him, and my wife and I trusted each other completely. Anyways, now he's the one getting divorced and abandoned by his family as mother-in-law doesn't want to be with him anymore. The tables have turned and he's left with the consequences of his actions. It's honestly been hard to watch, but at the same time, it feels like justice for everything he's put us, and especially my wife, through. Update 3. It's been 7 months since our last update. A lot of people have been asking what happened, so we're here to fill you in. First of all, my mother-in-law is now single. She broke up with my wife's father and kicked him out. It turns out that our revelation helped my mother-in-law uncover even more about my father-in-law's actions. She found out that he had been having multiple affairs throughout their entire marriage, but what made it even worse was that she found out he had given her a sexually transmitted disease. She had no idea until she decided to get herself tested. It was a devastating blow for her, especially after everything she'd already been through. She never could have imagined that her husband, the man she trusted for so long, had been not only cheating on her, but also putting her health at risk in the process. Thankfully, after getting tested, she's been able to start the necessary treatment. We're all hopeful that with the right care, she'll fully recover. It's been a difficult time for her, both physically and emotionally. To think that she spent so many years unaware of the betrayal and risk that my father-in-law was exposing her to. It's just heartbreaking. But despite everything, she's been incredibly strong through all of this. As a family, we've rallied around her to offer support. We've been there for her as much as possible, whether it's just checking in, helping her with the practical aspects of daily life, or just offering a shoulder to lean on. It's not easy to heal from something like this, but we're confident that with time, she'll come out of this even stronger. We're all sticking together, and she's not going through this alone. We've all cut off contact with my father-in-law after the divorce. He tried reaching out to my wife and me, trying to turn the tables and accuse us of destroying his marriage. He even threatened us in a text message saying we'd regret what we did and that we should have kept our mouths shut about his affair. That's when I finally lost it. I sent him this message, which I am just copying and pasting it here. You're a joke. You destroyed your own family with your lies and affairs, and now you want to blame us for it? You had a good life handed to you and you pissed it away. Don't try to come to us with your threats. You're not going to make us regret anything. In fact, we're better off without you. You've lied, manipulated, and caused so much pain. And now you want sympathy? You deserve everything that's coming to you, and I hope you are miserable and alone for the rest of your life. After that, he hasn't contacted us again. We have heard some rumors that he's living now with his girlfriend. But at this point, we just don't care about his life anymore. He's made his bed, and now he has to lie in it. If he's still with his girlfriend or not, it doesn't concern us. Honestly, we're just relieved to be rid of a scum like him. Stay tuned for more stories from Argo Relationships.